Hi everyone, I'm really pleased to be joined today by Dale Willis. Dale is an absolute legend in the education sector, truly putting the pieces together to make sure that people understand how to hire young people and giving information to young people how to get their great first job. So Dale, welcome today.
Thank you very much.
Dale, My Great First Job, can you tell me about the organisation?
Sure. So My Great First Job is a non-profit organisation, and its role is to help young people navigate their way from education to employment. We work with young people who are leaving school at the end of year 11,
Right.
at the end of A-levels, and sometimes graduates as well. But our job is to make sure that young people can make really informed decisions about what they want to do next. That's the purpose.
So it's providing information for a better career path.
Absolutely, yeah. Making sure they've got the information that they need to be able to make a great decision about what comes next for them.
Yeah, perfect. Dale, as an industry, we generally are struggling to attract younger people into our sector. So what's your view on how we can perhaps address this?
Sure, I think there's a real opportunity for employers to think about engaging more with young people before they reach that moment of choice about what they're going to do. So I think there's opportunities to offer work experience, but work experience can sometimes to an employer feel like a bit onerous. It's like I've got to have somebody in for a week, I've got to look after, I've got to put a whole plan together, and sometimes, in this current world, and particularly with hybrid working as well, that might feel unrealistic. So I think any engagement that a young person has with employer is really beneficial. So maybe they could contact local schools and say, look, would somebody like to come in for a day? It doesn't even need to be in the school timetable, it could be in the holiday. So opportunities to engage with young people so that when they're making their choices, they're not hearing about your brand or your industry for the first time. They've already engaged with it. So I think that would be a real opportunity. And I've seen some really good employers who are running programs where it becomes their talent pipeline. So before they've advertised the vacancy, they've already identified and have been working with and sharing experiences with young people from the local school. I think that's a real opportunity to explore.
Great, and with work experience, is there a trend when somebody does the work experience, they potentially could stay there and be an employee?
I've seen so many times young people go on work experience, that work experience leads into a part-time job in the summer holidays or in other holidays, and then that person feels part of the company, and it becomes a natural progression then from work experience to having a part-time job to working at that company. So I think that's a great model. I've seen lots of times that happen.
I think there's a lot of benefits that a younger person can bring to an employer. I mean, would you share that sentiment?
Oh gosh, 100%. So on a broader scale, all companies are, for example, using social media and using digital communications in a new way. What generation doesn't know that more and how to do that than young people?
That's right.
So it's not just about coming necessarily into the industry just to look at the job they were doing, but that young person could be helping somebody with their TikTok account, with their Instagram account, could be looking at different ways that they're sharing content that maybe somebody who isn't using it all the while hasn't thought about. So I think young people can bring an awful lot of additional things into a business that a business can harness and use.
Can you share an example where you've experienced that progression from someone who started as a work experience learner, say for a few days, and actually been very successful in their future career for doing that?
Yeah, sure. So so a number of young people I've worked with have gone in fact some have only gone in for a couple of hours and have just gone in for a couple of hours, had a conversation, realised they liked it. The employer has said, that really works for us too. Do you want to come back? That's then developed into some work experience in holiday. That's then gone through to a part-time job, to a full-time job in an apprenticeship, and then that person is still in the business. And that all started just from somebody coming in for an hour or two at the beginning. Our world is all about relationship building. Young people don't leave school knowing exactly what they want to do. I'll often say to young people, if you're in a room of 40-year-olds and go around and ask them, are you all doing what you thought you'd be doing at 16? Most of those people are going to say, not at all. We figure it out along the way. We start to figure out what we're good at and what might be something we want to do less of, want to do more of, and then we work our careers through from that. I think the opportunity to start figuring that out when you're 15, 16 is one that can be hugely beneficial to both people.
Great.
So I've seen industries going into schools, not just to generic careers events or to recruit, but just saying to that school, how can my business add value to your lessons? Because every business in construction is marketing itself. Every business has got an accounts function and a finance function, as well as the construction element of it. So bringing the whole business into the school for maybe one lesson means that those young people have a better sense of what's going on within business. I've also seen lots of businesses get involved in things like podcasts, things like webinars and stuff, where they're guesting on it. Every time there's an opportunity for that business to put themselves in front of young people.
Communicate,
Yeah, absolutely, because young people don't know these businesses actually exist in some cases. One example I use is that I was in a school talking to IT students. There was an IT company I was really familiar with. It was a brand within that town, but none of the students had heard of that company and so weren't applying there because they weren't buying on a business to business basis. They were buying on a consumer basis.
Yeah, generic,
Yeah, so they're not familiar with the brand. So I think take every opportunity to put yourself in front of that young audience, and take every opportunity to offer an experience to that audience. As I said before, it doesn't need to be a week's work experience. Somebody coming in for an hour and having a conversation is going to be super valuable. So I'm seeing in other industries people saying young people aren't applying to us, so how can we be more proactive about being in the space that they're in? I'm also seeing really successfully businesses running TikTok and Instagram accounts on social media where they're sharing what the job is. They're sharing the personal side of their work, of their company, and young people can not just see what the job is, but they can see the vibe of what it's like to work at that place as well.
Very often it's identifying the right platform for that communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Young people are using social media as we as adults might use a search engine. So they're putting into social media, give me posts around this, and then they're seeing that content come through. So every opportunity that a business has to promote themselves on social media, to share the personal side of working in that business, means that a young person has a better sense of what it's like to work
relevant.
there. Absolutely, making it relevant, making it relatable to that young person.
Yeah. So Dale, you mentioned that it's smart to get industry companies to liaison, to communicate with schools about the jobs that are on offer. But how do you think we can go about doing this? How can we achieve that situation? Whose responsibility is it to communicate the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, it's really tricky, Simon, because it's quite a disjointed market, really. That there are different ways of getting hold of people. A key contact for lots of schools is going to be the enterprise advisor. Right. Now, the enterprise advisor is somebody from the world of business who is working with that school, and their job, it's a voluntary role, but their job is to connect business with education. Okay. So they really want to hear from businesses to say, how can we get involved in the school? Because then they can take that in. So they're working with the senior leadership team of the school, trying to make sure that business is involved in that education market.
So would the business contact the school directly, or would they contact this enterprise consultant?
Yeah, so it's going to be, the business isn't going to know who that is, so I would ring the school up and say, do you have an enterprise advisor that's working with you? Or email somebody in the senior leadership team, somebody in the head or the deputy head there, say, do you have an enterprise advisor? Yeah. You could also contact your local careers hub. So wherever you are in the country, just search out Careers Hub, whatever your county is. Okay. And those people will be helping to recruit those enterprise advisors as well. So you've got two prongs on it. If the school doesn't know who their enterprise advisor is, and that could depend on who you talk to, they're big organisations, then just Google the Careers Hub for your area. And speak with those and say, who is the enterprise advisor for this school, and they'll be able to fix that up if they've got one and be able to tell you, and that would be a really great way in.
So the process is, if a business wants to consider taking on somebody for work experience, to explain what kind of roles are available, is to contact the school in the first instance.
Yeah, I would contact the school. I would ask to speak to the work experience coordinator.
Right.
It could be the careers lead,
Okay.
and it could be the enterprise advisor.
So the enterprise advisor could potentially look at what types of companies would take on a work experience individual.
Yeah, and then the school and you can work together as to how that work experience
really
could work. Yeah.
Yeah, my experience is I did 5 days in an estate agent, but
Yeah.
I really should have done 2
Yeah.
to understand what I wanted to do. But take your point, it hasn't got to be a week.
No, I think there's an opportunity here for schools to rethink work experience because you know even today it's more difficult to find a week. We've changed the way we work after the pandemic. Our offices and our workplaces aren't always manned 5 days a week, so it can be more difficult for you to take somebody on work experience. But I think it's just as valuable for 2 days, for 1 day, for somebody to be able to come in and see what it's like in the business. If you want to work in construction and you don't know anybody that works in construction, that 1 day of coming into a construction environment is going to give you more information than any number of people talking about it. So being and seeing it and feeling it and talking to people and developing a network of people within there. And then you as an employer are able to think, you know, this young person looks pretty interested in what we've got here. Why don't I now see if they want to come back for a couple of days in the next holiday? Why don't I see if in their work experience week they might want to come in for a bit longer? But there's a mixture of things that people can do on work experience. It doesn't have to just be in person. There's some online work experiences that they can dovetail into that as well.
Okay, interesting. I think in our sector particularly, I'm unaware of very much of that going on, so maybe that's something that perhaps the industry could address.
I really think it's an opportunity to add value to education, but also to develop a talent pipeline of people so that you're not just trying to attract people in on the day of your vacancy, because don't forget they haven't heard of you. They're 16 years of age. They haven't heard of you. So you might be really big within your industry, but if young people aren't buying that, that's a brand they're not familiar with. So
you're not a train driver or an airline partner or a policeman.
Absolutely, yeah. And engage with young people earlier. Develop relationships. Develop relationships with the school. Of course, it takes time, and of course it takes a bit of effort. But I think finding the right person is going to take. It's going to take a lot more effort to manage them if you get the wrong person.
And it's everybody's responsibility. Who did see behind my great first job?
So there's 2 key players in my great first job. My colleague William brings a whole ton of experience working in a commercial environment, working for major national employers, and also working in a training capacity as well. So he's really involved in thinking about development of an individual, not just within their skills of their job, but as a whole person as well.
Okay.
My role is that for over 25 years I ran an apprenticeship training provider. So my background is in apprenticeships. And when I moved away from that business, I realised I'd got a whole bunch of skills and knowledge that young people needed to know. I'd seen young people not get jobs they wanted to get because of something that they made a mistake or they didn't know how to do something. So we started by doing some small community events, and that has really grown now. We run webinars every other week with people attending from right across the country, and we do a whole bunch of school visits. We work with some of the careers hubs, with some of the UniConnect organisations to really inspire young people to continue in learning, continue their personal development.
Fantastic. So Dale, the target audience is who?
So the young people that we work mostly with are young people who might be looking at other paths other than university.
Right.
So lots of the young people that we work with are in the sixth form. They're doing A-levels, they're doing BTEC level 3 qualifications, but have decided that maybe continuing in full-time study might not be the right option for those, and they're looking at really great options, other pathways to university, like degree apprenticeships, higher apprenticeships, where they can continue to develop their learning, continue to move forward, but also gain those skills in a more practical way.
Right, okay. So what specific products or solutions do you offer?
So we offer free careers webinars, which are open access, promoted by schools across the country, where young people can come on and get some information about a particular topic, for example, degree apprenticeships. Right. But also we try whenever we can to have young people as our guests. So we'll be talking about degree apprenticeships. Really relatable.
Yeah.
So we'll have some degree apprentices on there talking about their experience. If we're talking about how to absolutely smash your interview, we'll have some young people on there who've recently got their job because they've done a great interview.
So you'll do specific sections based on those specific topics, yeah?
Absolutely, and wherever possible have young people on those as guests to share their experiences. So webinars is one thing that we do. We then deliver all of those sessions live in person in schools.
Right.
So we'll go into a school and deliver them maybe just for 1 hour session, or maybe some schools will book us in for the day.
So sometimes you deliver the webinar live as well as recording it and filming it across the internet. Yeah,
absolutely,
amazing. That's great, yeah.
So
it makes it fun for the young people too, I guess.
And we can engage with more because the entire class is there. So we do the webinars, we do in-person delivery, and we also run a career mentoring service as well. Okay. Now we're working on a project in Northamptonshire where we are, and in Bedfordshire where we're...
And you cover where, Dale, across the country? How far is your reach?
Oh, we'll go absolutely anywhere. Okay. So I've been everywhere in the last year, from Clacton to Oldham to Weymouth.
So it's a national service?
Yeah, national service that we can offer.
Okay.
In the Midlands, we're working on a project at the moment where schools are identifying the young people who are looking at alternative routes to university, who are doing A-levels but are not wanting to go to university. And then we're supporting those young people by making sure they know about the options, have got a great CV, are looking at their personal branding, so they're developing content on their CV, helping them with their interviews. So that we run that mentoring service in schools, but we also run a degree apprenticeship mentoring service online as well.
Okay.
So young people, either on an individual basis or in a group mentoring basis, can take the responsibility for moving themselves forward.
So you're providing options, and the individual would choose with perhaps the career advisor's support?
Yeah, so on parents as well. We run a lot of our webinars will have parents on them, where parents have sat with their, sometimes parents on their own, or just because they want to get information. What is it all about? Degree apprenticeships didn't exist when I was leaving school. I don't know what they are now, so I'm gonna get some information. So parents for us is pretty much the key.
Because the parents' default is go to university in most cases.
And lots of cases it is, and also parents don't know necessarily about the other options. So we really try and encourage schools to send the information to parents, so that parents, as well as getting their son or daughter to come on the session, can also come on the session themselves. And
that's really interesting. So you educate not only the students but also the parents.
100%, 100%,
Good. How has the target audience, the students or school leavers, benefit from your service? And perhaps you give a few examples, Dale.
Oh, do you know what? One of the best things about my life right now, Simon, is rarely a week goes by without a young person, often somebody I've never met, messaging me on Instagram and saying, I was on your webinar, I used everything you've said, and I've just got this job. And often I've never met that person. I'll go into schools and I'll deliver a session, and there might be 175 people in the audience. I don't know who's listening, but I'll get a message on Instagram 3 weeks later saying, thanks for coming into my school, I used the information and look what I'm doing. That's really rewarding. I also then, through the mentoring service, I'm able to work a lot closer with some young people. So there's a young man I've just helped get a solicitor degree apprenticeship. Really difficult to get onto. He hadn't necessarily got the top grades that he presumed he'd need, but we worked really hard on his personal branding over the last year.
Good attitude.
Great attitude. There wasn't an event about law apprenticeships that guy didn't go to in the last year. His LinkedIn profile was thoroughly developed. So at the end of the recruitment process, it wasn't just his grades that got him that job. It was his attitude and the way he had branded himself. So
you've helped him to do that.
Absolutely, and it was really great to get a message from him and from his mum afterwards to say, we've got to where we wanted to be with your help.
So you're encouraging feedback, and I would assume you're creating a situation where you're getting statistics that prove that what you're doing works.
Yeah, I mean, after every single webinar, we get feedback. We get feedback from the young people. We get a ton of comments from them, their parents, and some teachers that are on there, saying what a difference it had made to them. But when we're doing the individual mentoring service, It's fantastic because you've developed a relationship. You've often never met the people because it's an online mentoring. You've developed a relationship with them over a year, 6 months maybe, and you've seen them come in with without a CV, without much on that CV. You've encouraged them to really think about that. You've helped them through the job application. You've helped them through the interview, and then they're messaging you and saying, "Do you know, I am where I am because we work together."
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Have you got an example where you've had to work with someone who's actually got a bad attitude, and how did you turn that person around?
Yeah, so not so much maybe bad attitude, but I think when you're young, and you've been through what we've been through here, COVID, these young people, a lot of them are doing exams for the first time when they do an A-level because of
this is where I'm thinking about people who think the world's against them.
Yeah, so I think...
And what's the point?
Yeah, I think attitudinally, I try and really really ask them to think about a positive mindset. To say that, you know, we can't control
That's
everybody
part of
else.
coaching, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But we can control ourselves. We can control and we can think positively about it. So we do work through to say you might not get that job, but what can you gain from it? What can we learn from it? And what can we move ahead with? And what I find is that when young people start, they can get knocked back really quickly if they don't get something, if they don't get a job, or they apply for a work experience program and it doesn't come through for them. But developing that resilience to take feedback, to take what they see as failure. It isn't failure. It's just, you know, you just didn't get that one. To develop that resilience is really, really important. To overcome disappointment.
Yeah.
And that's part of the mentoring program. And absolutely, I've seen young people who have come on at the beginning thinking, "Oh, I've got some great grades. I'm just going to walk into stuff."
Right.
And they need to bring more to the table than grades.
Because it's competitive.
Yeah, absolutely, it's competitive. The best jobs, the best companies. If you're looking at a degree apprenticeship, you're having your degree paid for and you're getting a salary. You know, that's going to be competitive. Yeah. So you might be an amazing academic student, but you really got to bring more to the table. But it's such a pleasure to see over that last year as they grow from year 12 through year 13, to see the input you've had makes a difference, and then they get the job.
Great. So from getting A to B, someone from a workshop perhaps that you've conducted to employment, how can that process become easier?
I think it is. Let's acknowledge it is tricky, difficult, frustrating. All of those things for a company, particularly a small business as well, to recruit an apprentice. It's not easy. This, 20, 30 years ago, apprenticeships were very localised, and I could have told you where I live, who looks after the apprenticeship in mechanics, who looks after the apprenticeship in construction. I could have told you all of that. It seemed
to be a trade apprenticeship, wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and I would have known the person who looked after it. Right. It's much more difficult
so
these
much
days.
more than that now, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think it's really tricky for employers, particularly small and medium employers, to navigate their way through what appears to be an administrative.
So do you guys also offer that service where you'll signpost?
Yeah, so if somebody was to ring me up and say, we've just recruited somebody, and for me that's the most difficult part, and I know employers don't necessarily think that. They think the admin and the bit that follows is the most difficult part. But it's only difficult because they don't know who to talk to. I think if you're contacting the National Apprenticeship Service, you're contacting CITB, you're contacting an organisation like us and saying, I've just recruited an apprentice in this particular discipline. Dale, who do I need to ring to get this apprenticeship sorted? Yeah, right. That, for me, is the most difficult part, because their job then is to get it sorted. Yeah. Their job as a training provider is to take all of that pain away from you.
Yeah, all the questions.
All the paperwork, all the stuff, or to deal with it.
The uploads,
Yeah, the difficult part is finding a young person. Oh, it doesn't need to be a young person. Let's be frank about it. Apprenticeships are for all age groups.
Upskill too.
How are you going to find an apprentice? So recruiting that person is the most difficult part, I think. And that's where I think that sort of whole talent pipeline helps by having developed relationships with that person. So
what we're saying, the talent pipeline is basically it's the work employed up front to get more education to what's available, and that then creates that talent pipeline.
Yeah, don't make it the first time you meet that person. Don't make it always that it's at a job interview, because you could, as an employer, have developed a relationship with and enhanced their education as well by starting that in work experience, whether that's in year 10 or year 12, that leads to a part-time job, that leads to coming in the summer holidays for a bit, and now that's becoming a relationship and an experience for everybody that's completely different to I'll meet you for the first time at an interview. Because when I ran the apprenticeship training provider, one of the things I used to joke about was, particularly if I was working with a small business, you've got a young person who's never interviewed in their life, and probably an employer who's never interviewed anybody in their life, and these two people in half an hour are trying to figure out.
They're scared of each other.
They're trying to figure out if it's going to work. Well, that's unrealistic. It's about developing relationships. So try not to make it about that 30 minutes interview. Try and make it about a relationship that you've developed.
So within the coaching, you would obviously offer that same advice to the employer as well.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, support the young person. We'd be talking, if an employer comes to us and says, you know, how do I interview a young person? Then we can help them. We can help them with that. But I think the key to it is saying that 30-minute interview by somebody who doesn't know how to interview with somebody who doesn't know how to interview doesn't sound like a great recipe for success. Whereas developing relationships over a longer time means that both people can figure out whether this is going to be a good fit.
In summary, what smart tips could you offer in terms of how an employer can attract young people to come and work with them?
Okay, so I would say get in touch with a number of your local schools, 2 or 3, and develop a relationship with them.
Locally,
that isn't just about you sending a vacancy in, but is developing a relationship that enhances the curriculum, but also enables you to meet some people. So I would say get involved in your local school. The second thing I would do is offer some experiences. Work experience does not need to be 1 week, it can be 1 hour. Anything in between.
That's interesting. 1 hour.
Just come in for an hour. Somebody come in. So as a business, maybe thinking, what am I doing this month to make it more likely that I'm going to recruit somebody? And if you're not doing anything this month that's going to make it more likely, it's not going to be more likely.
I think that's great awareness. Most employers will probably think that it's a week's work experience.
Yeah, it's just as valuable. Any connection that a young person has with an employer is going to leave a real positive stamp, not just on the young person but on the employer as well. So I think about how you can engage with young people. Think about what you can offer. If you can't offer a week's work experience but you can offer an hour a month, do it and get involved. And I think the final thing is keep an eye out for things like this, webinars that are running where young people are watching. Think about your social media. How can you promote what you do in a space where young people are, and their parents as well. I think their parents is important too. But be where the people are that you want to recruit. So if you're trying to advertise somewhere for a vacancy or for young people, and young people aren't looking there, then that's not going to work. So think about where young people are and be there.
Yeah, and you spoke about platforms earlier.
Yeah, so I think lots and lots of businesses will be horrified at the thought of doing stuff on TikTok. And so talk to some young, don't do it yourself, talk to some young people and say, what sort of content would you like to see about this industry on TikTok? And how would it work? And get young people to do it for you. Contact your local school and say, have you got some media students that can come and help me run a TikTok channel? I want to tell you about a young lad who contacted a professional football club and said to them that your Snapchat channel is rubbish. I'm sure he didn't use those words, but he said your Snapchat channel is rubbish. He spent the next, and they said, we're all 50, we don't know what we're doing with it. So he spent the next year 13 at school, working at a professional football club on match day, taking photos and posting them on Snapchat. He eventually then went on to university to do a degree in sports media. So when the interviewer at the university was able to say to him, you're really passionate about sports media, what have you done about that so far? It's like, I've run the Snapchat account for a professional football club. Now both were winners in that, because he got to where he wanted to go to, and the club got a Snapchat account that wasn't run by 50-year-olds who didn't know what they were doing with it, was run by a 17, 18-year-old who was the end user.
So it goes back to being relevant again. That's
absolutely relatable and relevant.
Yes.
So think about how young people can bring value and be in their space as well, be where they are. And if you haven't got the skills to be where they are, then just ask young people to help you.
Brilliant. Of course, we'll put all the links in the description below of the reference to your website where people can get further information.
Yeah, all our social media channels,
And you're happy for people to contact you, Dale, for a
100%,
conversation.
whether that's on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, email, website, wherever, that's all fine.
Great, Dale Willis, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for watching this special Movers and Shakers with Dale. We really hope that the information you've listened to today and you've watched will help you stroke people in your circles to think about perhaps work experience, think about apprenticeships, and the information's there. Dale's here to help you.